Now we will have our third panelist, Rabbi Robert Levy of Temple Beth Emet. Rabbi Levy has been Temple Beth Emet's rabbi since April 1st, 1984. Rabbi Levy received a BA in Biblical Studies from Boston University, where he was magna cum laude and received the Richard E. Katz Memorial Scholarship. He received his Master's of Hebrew Letters in 1977 and rabbinical ordination from Hebrew Union College, Jewish Institute of Religion in 1979. Rabbi Levy recently took a sabbatical, cycling through the southern states, serving small congregations that do not have rabbis. And he also regularly leads trips to Israel. Without further ado, Rabbi Robert Levy.
I'm also short. As long as I'm standing here, I also say that every year I run a youth mission where we travel around Lake Michigan. They don't let us ride our bikes across the bridge, but we get on a truck and they drive us across to the other side. It's actually, what a stunning bridge. When I hear someone speak about Islamic law, there is such a connection between what exists in Jewish law. The whole idea, if Sharia means path, halakha, the word for Jewish law, means path. It is very much in the same way a world of law. It is not about religion solely. It's about contracts, it's about jurisprudence, it's about criminal activities, it's about all the things that go into any legal system. In the United States, basically a sort of a Christian understanding of law became the civil understanding of law, which then changed and grew on its own, and I'm not trying to say that American law is Christian law, but that is sort of the path it took. Jewish law didn't do that. Islamic law didn't do that, and so we have these other worldviews of law within our own faith traditions. Now, if somebody came into your house at night, it was dark, you couldn't see them. They came into your house to rob. They take out a suitcase and they start putting in the silverware, and you know they're robbing your house. And if you came down the stairs with the gun you keep by the bedside and shot them and killed them, in many jurisdictions in the United States, you would be culpable for the violence you committed against that person, even though they were in your house, even though they were committing a crime. And in fact, maybe a jury wouldn't be so quick to convict, but the law in some jurisdictions is pretty obvious that you can't just shoot people even in your own house. In Jewish law, you can. And the reason you can is, it's a well-worked-out opinion, that you might, if the robber came into your house, the robber would think that maybe if he saw you, he would kill you, and therefore you wouldn't go into their house without a gun, and therefore it's perfectly legitimate for the homeowner to assume that you assumed that he had a gun, and therefore since you have a gun, you can use it. Now, that's neither here nor there, but and I assure you we would never attempt for a Jew to go into court and say, well, my religious tradition says I can kill anybody I want in my house after dark. Interesting, it has to be after dark, when you couldn't see the weapon the other person had. That's not what we do, because we have a principle. The principle is from the 3rd century. It's called Dina Machuta Dina. This is actually in Aramaic. Most of our legal discussions do not occur in Hebrew, but occur in Aramaic, being that that was the vernacular language in the formative period of Jewish law. Dina means law. Machuta means the sovereign power. Dina, again, means law. Dina Machuta Dina means the law of the sovereign power is the law that we follow, even if it might disagree with the law that we developed when we might have been the sovereign power, or even law that we developed when we weren't the sovereign power. But, law professors like to think about things, even if they can't control them all. They think about law. Let me give you another example. I do a lot of marriages. It's part of what I do. In fact, the state of Michigan is very nice and gives me the power to do these marriages as long as I keep good records and as long as I have a certain validation from my faith community, which in communities that don't have such validations, there are other ways of doing it. So the law in the state of Michigan and almost all states is very much open to the idea that people can practice their religion and be married as they choose, as long as that information is passed on in an appropriate manner to the state with, in most states, a state license. So I get a lot of state licenses. It used to be, interestingly enough, that it had a place for 2 witnesses to sign, but not the bride and groom. Now that law has been changed and bride and groom sign the license. The same thing is true actually in Jewish law. There is a license. It's not really a license. Again, it's very similar to Islam. It's a contract as opposed to a license, because marriage is viewed as a meeting of two individuals and perhaps two families, not a religious event in which God ordains that this couple be united. It's simply it's a difference, no more, no less. But in that contract, the names of the people are found, but they do not sign it. It is signed by two witnesses. Now, modern ketubas also have the bride and groom sign them, but again, that's a much more modern occurrence. Anyway, I get the license, and I have people sign it. If the people come in, let's say I did, for some bizarre reason, I never met the people before. Let's drop back to the 1950s. And in the 1950s, two people come in, they want to get married. One is visibly pregnant. This would be the woman. She comes in with the two people who are going to sign the marriage license. Okay? The groom is a little cowering in the corner because the two witnesses are her brothers, and they have rifles with them. Okay? Shotguns, I might point out. Okay? Now, in the state of Michigan, as far as I understand, they'd be perfectly legitimate witnesses to sign that marriage license. In Judaism, the ketubah may not be signed by relatives. Why? Because relatives have an interest in the proceedings. The purpose of the witnesses is, let's say 20 years down the way, the marriage dissolves in one form or another, and there's an attempt made not to have divorce, but to have the marriage dissolved, because it never occurred. And the one side says, well, we didn't mean it when we said it. There wasn't really contract because it wasn't really intended. Well, the witnesses are called in. The witness says, well, generally a witness would say, well, I was there, everybody was sincere. But if it's the two brothers with the shotguns, maybe they have an economic interest in the store that their sister now runs for maternity clothes. So that there is going to be an economic interest that has to be taken into account. And in Jewish law, one way of taking into account is, without a doubt, blood relatives may not sign marriage licenses. So there is I would say that is a superior stance in Jewish law. However, would I ever say on the Michigan license that a blood relative couldn't sign it? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. Because dina machuta dina. Because the law of the state of Michigan is the law, and I follow that law. Even though it's from the 3rd century, even though it's this, even though it's that. But there is an edge to dina machuta dina. An edge that says we can't allow the state to tell us everything it wants to tell us about how we are going to live our lives and how we are going to function. For example, if the state of Michigan or the state of Wyoming said that kosher killing of animals was harmful to the animals, and it was animal cruelty. By the way, you may or may not know this has happened in America. And therefore the state decides that the killing of animals in a kosher manner, which we can argue about animal husbandry and whether or not kosher killing is gentle or not, but the purpose of kosher killing is to be gentle. The knife is, you take the knife that's going to use to slaughter the animal, and is inspected for any nicks. A nick would bring pain. Once a knife is deemed to be unnicked, either by resharpening it or just finding out it's unnicked, the animal is then slaughtered in a manner that the blood, as quickly as possible, is drained from the body, therefore, again, decreasing the pain of the animal. The knife is inspected again. If the knife now has a nick, the animal is deemed not kosher, that it has not been killed in a way to minimize pain. The pain was caused, the nick was caused in the act of killing the animal, and that meat is not permitted for kosher meat. That meat can be sold for other purposes, but it cannot be eaten because there's something unholy about eating an animal that was taken into pain. Now, you could say that all animals, I mean, I don't know if we have any vegetarians here, excuse me, who are vegetarians because of the pain that is inflicted on animals. I do eat meat, but my rest of my family doesn't, so I'm the outsider on this. But that would be a legitimate position. But if the state would say that what Armor Foods does is perfectly all right, but what those Jews do is animal cruelty and outlawed, I would be out there doing civil disobedience. If the state of Michigan or any other state in the Union, said that circumcision, which now is sort of being debated again, but generally has found a place in the American medical establishment, although that place is not necessarily permanently secure. But the place of circumcision within my tradition is permanently secure. And if the state would say, as sometimes states have tried to say, that circumcision is child abuse, I would be committing acts of civil disobedience to maintain that. And you would be free to put me into jail for that, because I would defend the right of Jews. That right goes back to the Seleucid period, when the Syrian Greeks told the Jewish people who had just been conquered by them, actually, it wasn't exactly they were conquered by them, but it's a long story, but basically the Assyrians conquered us, they turned us over to the Babylonians, who turned us over to the Persians, who eventually turned us over to the Greeks, who outlawed circumcision. And when they did that, we did circumcisions quietly. We did circumcisions under penalty of arrest. We did circumcisions under the penalty of capital punishment. But we maintained our religion and stood by something that we believed in, even to the point of our own harm and our own even capital punishment. Because there are some things we won't let go of. But the basic principle would stand up no matter what. We don't hold our own laws as superior to the law of the land, even though we will sometimes break the law, as many people will talk about civil disobedience as important. As long as our rights are protected as Jews. It seems to me that this law that's being passed is not about that. This law is about working slightly the other way, of infringing in the other direction, under the guise of not infringing at all, just being fair and honest to what is American law as against the intrusion of foreign law. But we're not talking about foreign law being imposed on Americans. I've never heard anyone, just as you were saying, anyone ever coming up with the idea that halacha would be better. Rashida said that we should all, that some people saying that we should all learn Arabic, and Arabic should be the language of the country. I'd actually like to learn Arabic, so I wouldn't want to push that, but a beautiful language. A beautiful language. I think the core problem here is that we understand Islam and we understand Judaism as a religion and not a culture. We understand it as an enemy and not a friend. We understand it as an outsider and not part of the greater mix that will make this American country greater than it's ever been as we grow and develop.